Hi, my name is Galen, and today we're going to put in a water softener. So I had an old water softener that needed to be replaced, and I looked around, and it was going to cost anywhere from $1,200 to like $2,500. And I was like, that's a little too expensive. But fortunately, I had Uncle Dennis. And Uncle Dennis has put in 5 or 6 of them, and I called him up just to get some advice, and he basically said he would trade me some work and a good dinner. So he came over and helped us put in that water softener. Now, the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need to get a water report. And all you do is you take a water bottle and fill it up out of your kitchen sink and take it down to a lab, like a agricultural laboratories is what I did a search on. And here in Modesto, California, it was A&L Western Agricultural Laboratories. And they were able to take that sample, and within about 3 days, I had a report. And the biggest thing I was looking at is I was really wanting to check the iron, and we have a well, and so I wanted to check the iron. And the other thing is I wanted to check the hardness, and they also gave me the calcium and the magnesium as well. So my calcium, my magnesium, and my iron, fortunately, were all looking good. So we had to focus on the hardness of the water. And for us, the hardness was 235 ppm, which is parts per million. And you're going to need that number later on whenever you go to configure the numbers within the device itself, within the softener. And basically you take that number 235 and you divide that by 17.1, and that will be the number that you use on the system itself. And then you also use how many people are living in the house. And that gives you the calculation for the system. And now what that does is it takes those numbers and it tells it how much salt it needs to use whenever it goes through and it cleans the system. And so you want to make sure you have those numbers. And then the second thing is you're going to need a parts list. And fortunately for everybody, I'll give you my parts list. I bought the system through Quality Water for Less, and I bought a Fleck 5,600 meter water softener with an almond cabinet. It actually matched our hot water heater, so I thought that would be the good color. And in addition to that, it came with the resin, which we will show you how to mix that. And then I also bought a 3/4 inch female bypass connector that connects to the unit, and basically that allows you to turn off the water if you need to the water softener, and so you can bypass it and you'll still get water. And you can turn it off and disconnect it, so you can disconnect the water softener and work on it if you need to, but you'll still have water. And I really wanted that. It wasn't very much. I don't remember the price, but 20 bucks or something, maybe 30. And then the drain tube, you're going to need a drain tube for the brine to drain into, and you're going to need a place for that to go. And for us, we already had a pipe that was there ready to go, so we were able to just stick it in there. So the total price of the Fleck system, or the Fleck system, was $504. Plus, we went down to the local hardware store and we got some PEC plumbing stuff, which was probably about 60 bucks maybe, and that kind of stuff. And then the salt was $5 per bag. It cost us $30 because we got 6 bags. They were 40-pound bags, and that filled the system. So our total price was about $600 plus a good dinner. And so anyhow, so for around $600, you should be able to put in a water system that will help your needs. So here's the video, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, we're going to install the bypass valve on the Fleck water softener control valve and meter. This is a water meter that measures how much water comes out of the water softener, so that this water softener only recharges when it's necessary. When you've used up the capacity of the water softener ion exchange resin, then it will recharge by flushing salt brine into the system, into the resin, and recharge the water softener. Anyway, I've put silicone grease on these O-rings on this fitting, and now I'm going to install the valve by pressing it in. You've got to be careful you do not catch the O-rings. There we go. Now that's on. And then you take these little metal clips like this and tighten them up so that they hold the valve in. This is the brine water level control valve. It has a float on it, and this float is actually a safety because normally the brine refill is a timed refill, and the only time the safety would come into play is if the excess amount of water was flowing in, and then this will shut the water off that's going into the brine tank, so it tops it off at a maximum level. This valve goes into this tube right here, this plastic tube that goes down into the bottom of the brine tank, and it's held in place with a stainless steel nut. You tighten the nut up so it's just snug. Now we're installing the dip tube. This has a screen on the bottom of the tube so that the ion exchange resin doesn't get sucked in with the water. And so it separates the water from the ion exchange resin. The dip tube goes into the bottom of the tank, sits right dead center on the bottom of the tank. And so we've got it in place, and now we're going to fill the tank with resin. Bring the dip tube with some tape so that we don't pour the ion exchange resin down through the center of the dip tube. Got that? Now we're placing the funnel in the hole here, and we're going to open up the ion exchange resin bag.
There we go. Good.
How's that for a... We're going to take the tape off the dip tube. There. And now we can put the control unit on. And
Oh, we need the
before you put the control unit on,
filter.
you need to, yeah, hang on to that for a minute. We need to take and put silicone grease on these O-rings. There's a big O-ring right here that seals the top of the unit. And so we put silicone grease on that, and then there's an O-ring inside here that seals against the dip tube. And we put silicone grease on that. Otherwise, without the silicone grease, you can't slide this thing together. And when you start tightening it, if that grease wasn't there, it'd just be too difficult to tighten. This is the top filter. The top filter goes into this unit, and it has to be in the exact right location so you can tell it's right when it's parallel, when the lip on the filter is parallel to the lip of the tank fitting there. And then you tighten it there. And now this goes on the dip tube. And we slide it down in the tank like that. And then we start tightening it. When the O-ring on the bottom of the valve assembly here contacts the top of the tank, you'll be able to feel it when you're tightening it. And from that point forward, you want to tighten it 1/4 to 1/2 of a turn farther. Normally, if they were doing this in the factory, they'd put a torque wrench on. Now we just contacted the O-ring. So now we're going to go 1/4 of a turn farther. So 1/4 would be here, and the 1/2 turn will be there. So if we turn it 1/4 turn, this part here will be facing that direction. If we turn it 1/2 turn, it'll be facing that direction. We want to be somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2. Galen, can you hold the tank, please? There. That's between a quarter and a half.
Okay.
And we're just going to leave it right there. We're going to turn this thing around so it's indexed properly. The incoming and outgoing water lines connect right here. And this will ultimately be filled up with salt. There's a little stainless steel screen right here. And this filters the brine going into the control valve.
Okay.
And then these are the fittings. There's a, let's open this. I'll explain to you a step-by-step procedure here. The way this works is this fitting right here, this brass fitting, goes into the tube like that. That stops the tube from collapsing when you tighten the nut on the tube to hold the tube into the valve. This is the brine filter, and it goes in like that, and that filters the brine coming in. This is a tapered plastic ferrule. The ferrule goes on. First you put the nut on the line, and then you put the flat side of the tapered ferrule so it seats against the back of the nut, the inside of the nut. So that's how it goes together. And then this goes into the valve on the control mechanism here, right there. That goes in, and you tighten that nut, and that locks this into place. Tube into the tank through this hole here. And that's how it should be dressed in, like that. So there's no tendency for it to kink. Thing is this that stops it from collapsing. And that has the ferrule built into it. So we're just going to slide this onto the tube like that. And we're going to push this tube into this fitting. You need to feel so that the tube is bottomed into that fitting. And then you put this nut, tighten this nut. This is the brine discharge fitting. And so when the thing regenerates, when the water softener regenerates, the waste water, which is a brine containing the material that is removed from the brine tank, the calcium that was in the water that was creating the hardness of the water, is discharged out through this, and it goes into a wastewater drain. So okay, there it is. Okay. This is the wastewater drain line, and this is what, a 25-foot length?
Yeah.
And this slides onto this fitting here. This is a PEX fitting. It uses this plastic pipe, and to use this you simply insert the pipe into the fitting and push hard, and it forms a seal, and it clamps it in there so it cannot be removed. There is a special tool that you can get that will release the fitting, and this is what the special tool looks like. And you just press with this special tool onto this surface right here on the fitting when the pipe's in it and pull out on the pipe, and it releases the pipe and you can pull the pipe out.
Huh.
Your water tested, they'll tell you what the hardness of the water is in parts per million. In order to set the water softener up so that it is set for your water hardness, you have to take the parts per million and divide that number by 17.1. When you divide it by 17.1, you'll end up with grains of hardness. This dial here is set on grains hardness, and you pull it out like this. Let's here. Let me get. You pull it out like that, and then you can turn the dial. And when you turn the dial, you set the grains of hardness on the dial, and there's provision for how many people are in the house. This determines the reserve capacity of your unit, so that if you have a lot more people in the house, they're going to be using more water. Anyway, you set the dial here. Right, our water hardness is 13 grains, and so we set it up so that we were right at 13 grains, which is right here, and it's set for 4 people at 13 grains. So anyway, that's the way that works.
All right, perfect. And this is the shut-off valve,
Bypass valve.
the bypass valve. So if you ever want to work on the unit, you basically turn that valve
To bypass.
to bypass.
You
it.
still have water in the house then.
Still have water in the house,
And
and then you can disconnect it from this bracket right here that he had put on before.
you just take these 2 screws loose,
Yeah.
right here and right here. The valve stays here, bypassing the water,
And you just pull the unit out.
and you pull the unit out. And to put it in a bypass, you just move this over here like that. The
Bypass.
pointer right here is pointing to bypass. To go back to service, there's service.
Their service. Very nice. And then we use PEC system for plumbing, and then that's how it's done.
This is the PEX pipe here, and these are the shark bite connectors, they call them.
Yeah.
And they're really neat, and they're actually, you can move things around when they're connected up
Yeah.
with that.
And that's how you do it. That's how you.
And this is a shut-off valve. This shuts off all the water going to the house.
There you go. Very nice. Well, thank you, Dennis. We appreciate you helping us get this done.
Okay, remove the cover. And then if you look at this thing right here, it tells you the time of day. And there's 4 p.m. right now. It says 4 p. That's 4 p.m. If it said 4 a, you'd know it was 4 in the morning. So you set the time of day, and to set the time of day, you push this red button right here, and see what it does. It pushes these gears so the gears aren't meshing with that anymore, and then you can just turn this wheel to whatever time you want. And you should always set it to the correct time. So 4 p.m. is where it was, so there, it's reset. Right here, this says it's in service. If it's regenerating, it will go through a bunch of different steps here, and this knob will actually, you'll see it rotates. Normally when it's in service, it's straight up and down, but it makes one full revolution to completely regenerate the water softener, and then it comes back and stops till in service. The thing that starts this thing turning is this clock mechanism right here, and this is measuring how many gallons of capacity you have left. So right now you have 2,100 gallons of water before this thing needs to regenerate. And then when it regenerates, it uses about 8 pounds of salt. Oh, I take that back. It uses 15 pounds of salt to regenerate. There's a label on the back. Now, when you put this back, Stacy, be careful, because this is real springy right here. And it's supposed to sit down on this little ledge that goes around here. But I got mine down and it sprung the thing all the heck, and then it wouldn't stay on there. And I had to heat it up and reshape it a little bit. So,
okay.
so just be careful, make sure it's sitting on the ledge back there.
Great.